The prehistoric mound builders from West Virginia left over 300 conical earth mounds that still are visited by people from all over the world. These mound builders are referred to as the Adena not because it is the name they gave themselves, but because of a man named Thomas Worthington. On his estate, called Adena, was a great earthen mound which became a prototype for identifying other mounds of similar traits and artifacts. The Indians who built mounds like the one on Worthington's estate then became referred to as the Adena Indians. On October 4th, 2014, my husband and I became a part of the many people who traveled to visit a mound when we visited the Criel Mound in South Charleston, West Virginia. We love to travel and learn about history, so the Criel Mound was a nice place to visit and learn about mounds because the largest concentration of the mounds was found in the areas of Greater Charleston, Moundsville, and the eastern panhandle of West Virginia. It was a nice 3-hour drive, and even though it was for school, we were excited to be able to get away for a small weekend trip. In the 8th grade, my whole school made a trip to the Grave Creek Mound in Moundsville, West Virginia. Only being exposed to the largest mound in the state made me expect to see a large, 62-foot high and 295-foot wide mound that would be a little difficult to find on the side roads in the city. However, this was definitely not the case. As we drove on the main road in South Charleston, we quickly found ourselves arriving at the mound. The Criel Mound is 33 feet high and 520 feet wide. This was much shorter than the mound I had grown up knowing and feeling dizzy at the top of. This mound is considered the second largest remaining Indian burial mound in the state. After actually seeing and standing on top of the mound, it is a little hard to believe that a mound that is so short is the second largest in West Virginia, but where the mound lacks in height, it makes up with in width. The mound is in its own little park that is taken care of by the city of South Charleston. Because the area that surrounds the mound is more of a business district, there is plenty of parking and we easily found a spot close enough to keep us from walking too far in the rain. The mound looks like it is a natural landmark, and only the steps to, the bricks are round, and the 2 trash cans at the top of the mound show that there has been any kind of tampering done to it. I had done some research and found that there was a small museum down the street where I would be able to find some more information on the mound. So after taking some pictures and walking around, we drove to the museum. When we entered the museum, we were greeted by Gloria Shirkey, a retired school teacher who had grown up in the area and jumped at the opportunity to educate others about the history of her town. She gave us the tour of the whole museum that was full of different artifacts, but none were from the actual Criel Mound. When I asked why there were no artifacts from the mound down the street, she told me that the Smithsonian had been the overseeing agency to the excavation of the artifacts, and they are just keeping the artifacts in one of their storage areas. Even after many calls, Mrs. Shirkey told me that the Smithsonian refuses to allow her to display the artifacts in the museum. The museum can have all of the pictures of the artifacts that they want, but they cannot have the actual artifacts from the Criel Mound. To make up for the lack of authentic Criel Mound artifacts, the museum has many other artifacts that have been found in different parts of West Virginia. This seems to help educate people about the Indians that may have been around in the time of the mound builders. There cannot be a museum having to do with Native American culture without some type of artifacts to tie the past to the present. Looking at pictures of artifacts gives one view of history, but actually being able to hold rocks that were believed to have been held by the early Native Americans makes history so much more real. We were then shown a scale replica of what was found inside of the mound. Cyrus Thomas from the Smithsonian Institution was the man who performed the excavation under the supervision of Colonel P.W. Norris in 1883. There were remains found at 3, 4, and 31 feet from the top of the mound. Not only were remains of humans found, but there were also many different artifacts in the mound. From fragments of copper to remains of tree bark to arrowheads, those who were buried in the mound had the supplies that they may need in the next life. It almost seemed like the ancient Egyptians' burial ideas. Mrs. Shirkey informed us that there were also clay pots in the area 31 feet from the top that were rumored to have still had water in them. The whole museum experience helped me to understand and appreciate the history of not only the mounds, but also of the Native Americans who were in West Virginia and parts of Appalachia. Much of Appalachia has to do with history and personal ties to the region. The Criel Mound serves both of these purposes. First, it is affiliated with the Native Americans that once lived in the South Charleston region. Archaeological findings show that Aboriginal man lived or hunted in the state for at least 10,000 years before the arrival of the first Europeans. A mound really helps to bring the history of many years ago to the forefront of a person's mind. Rather than spending hours in a museum or reading multiple books, people can walk outside, get some fresh air, and physically interact with history when they visit a mound. Mounds have many community ties to them as well. The picture shown here is of an army outpost on top of a mound in Tennessee. The Criel Mound has also been used in irreverent ways. At one point, the top of the South Charleston Mound was leveled in order to erect an office and judges' stand in connection with some type of race course surrounding it. Although this occurred before the excavation in 1883, the mound, while once the center of a Native American community, became the entertainment center of the early South Charleston community. Also, on the Sunday after our visit, we attended church services at a church in St. Albans, West Virginia. While I do not remember the man's name, he informed us that when he was a child, Santa Claus used to sit at the top of the mound so that children could climb the mound to see him. Even in more recent history, though irreverently, the mound was used as the center of the community. Although the Criel Mound is only one of many mounds in West Virginia, it is definitely one of the most interesting in the state. It is located in an area that is visitor-friendly and even has its own museum. I would recommend that anyone who has an interest in Native American history visit South Charleston to see the Criel Mound and learn more about it at the South Charleston Interpretive Center to further their education.